Hello and welcome back to the Witness Podcast, a place where we explore what it means to be witnesses of Jesus Christ. We hope you enjoy this episode. Here we are. We are back with our second, although it's kind of our first, really, isn't it? It's kind of our first official podcast for anyone who's watching, because I'm sure there's like thousands of fans. Here we are with official episode number 1, and we are going to kick off with just sharing our stories because that feels like a good way to get into whatever we end up talking about on this podcast, is just sharing a bit of context about who we are and what we've experienced and who we know Jesus to be in our lives. So Ruby is going to kick off. And this is really funny because I have heard your story in multiple ways, so many times over the years, and probably most recently at your baptism, where I cried the whole way through. So I'm going to really just hold it together this time. But that's just what happens when you've just been around in people's lives for a while and you've seen them go through some stuff. But I think your story is phenomenal, so I'm excited for other people to hear what God's done. But let's kick off. I think let's start with like what your kind of childhood looks like. And we kind of talked about this a bit in planning how we were going to do this, and you were like, I'm still a child. How do I talk about my childhood when I'm still in it? Yeah, why didn't you start by just sharing like how you grew up and what kind of family, home, Christian context, all that kind of stuff look like for you?
I mean, mine is like the typical, I grew up in a Christian household, and so I've always been around Christians and faith, and I've just like, I mean, I guess I've always seen my parents and how they respond to situations with like a Christian like outlook on it. And that's just been my normal until, I mean, not really until, but like then you go to school and you see like other people who are from different backgrounds who don't really have the same outlook. And so that's, yeah, so in primary school, like just seeing how other people view the world and realizing that actually Christianity isn't the only thing. It's like everyone else has their own beliefs. But I've always had a strong like Christian foundation, I guess. I've always believed in God. There hasn't, I mean, there's been moments of doubt, but it's never been like a long period where I just have like not believed in God. I feel like when I look back on like when I was younger, it's actually so beautiful. My relationship with Jesus. I said this at my baptism, I think, but I would shut my door and I'd like write songs about him, and I'd like, it was so cute. It's like literally like childlike faith. So like really beautiful. And that's really set me up for the rest of my life. And then this is where it changes. So I started secondary school and I just didn't have a good time there. Like I was picked on a lot for my haircut because I had really short hair,
Which
and that
looks so
really,
cool, can we just say? That was such an era for you, Ruby. It was so cool.
yeah, because the thing is, like Megan, you've literally seen me through, I think since I was like 10 maybe. So you've seen all the haircuts, you've seen all the phases, and you've seen my testimony in real life. But that really knocked my confidence. Because like at primary school, you're just like, for me, I was so confident because I was just a child and I didn't think that I needed to worry about the way I looked or the way other people viewed me until I went to secondary, and you're just exposed to so much and just other teenagers, I guess, who are going through their own stuff and they project it onto you. That knocked my confidence a lot in year 7. I just was not having a good time at that school. So I moved school at the end of year 7. From that year, I had such bad self-esteem and confidence. It just affected the way I viewed myself. I kind of fell into disordered eating and very slowly. So it wasn't like I couldn't really notice. My parents noticed from like the beginning, but I didn't know what was happening. I was just like, yeah, I'm just being healthy. I just won't eat that. I'll just eat more vegetables and more fruit and I'll exercise more because that is health, because that was what I thought health was, but it's not. That kept going and I was so shy as well at my new school. Then in year eight, I would barely speak. I remember coming home, I probably spoke about 100 words at school today, like just saying, here, miss, here, sir, and not talking to anyone because I was so anxious. And I've always been anxious, but that was extreme anxiety. I would come home and I would exercise for hours on end. I had like this streak in my head of I've been doing intense exercise for the past 100 days and it made me feel so good. I'm like successful. I felt good enough for like a short period of time and then I'd feel bad again. Because I was so hungry, I would not eat throughout the day or I'd eat like tiny, tiny amounts and then I'd eat my dinner and I'd be like, I'm starving. And so I'd binge eat so much. And then I'd just go to bed feeling so full and disgusting. And then I'd like feel not good. And then I'd wake up the next day and the cycle kept on going. I was so exhausted. So I stopped football because that was something I loved, but I just felt so depressed. I was like, I can't play football well enough. I felt like I wasn't good enough because I couldn't play as good as I could if I'd been eating or I'd been resting. So then, like, my life just got smaller and smaller until it was literally just wake up, eat as little as you can, do as much exercise as you can in the limited hours of the day, and then go to bed until June, July of year eight. So 2023, yeah, 2023 was the bad year. It was so bad that I couldn't stop moving. I wouldn't stand still. I would be like walking on the spot. I wouldn't go to bed at a normal time. I would like walk around my bedroom. It was just like constant compulsions and feeling like I have to do this or I'm going to be unhealthy. If I was annoyed at something, I'd say it's like fat and ugly. That was just the way I spoke. And I think it's the way I felt about myself, but I was putting it out on other things. It was just so not true. And there were so many thoughts in my head, and I was like, I'm just so not happy. I don't know what to do, and I don't know how I'm going to get out of this. I've just felt lost. And I was like, I know God is real, and I know that He's got something better for me than this, but I don't know how I'm going to get to that. And I could just see, I guess it was kind of images, it wasn't really, but it was like knowing in the back of my mind that it will get better than this, even though I didn't know how that was going to happen. I remember just sitting down one day thinking, I'm going to get better somehow. It will either be I have to go to hospital and then I'll be like forced to get better, or God's going to really help me and I'm going to do it by myself, or I'm just going to give up one day and have to get better. And so I started going to therapy, and that was so helpful. I got diagnosed with OCD, and it was just helpful to understand what was going on in my brain because I just thought I was really weird. And I just didn't understand myself or my brain, and it was so exhausting being in my thoughts all day long with just so many intrusive thoughts. And so eventually getting that diagnosis, strong medication, it was miraculous how quickly I got better. My therapist said this as well. It shouldn't have been that easy. I remember my mum saying to me one day, it's going to get harder than it is. And it never got harder. There were obviously moments where I was like, I really don't want to have dinner now. I want to keep exercising. But I just go downstairs anyways. And that was all through God. It was all what God did for me. And I would not have been able to do it in my own strength. And I can see that so clearly. And I could see it then as well. As I said earlier, the walking around my room. One night I was just like, nah, I'm sick of it. And I'm just going to go to bed tonight. And I did. And that was all God. And if that hadn't happened, then I don't know where I'd be now. I don't really like to think about where I'd be because it was just such a dark place. But I knew God was with me through it all. I said this at my baptism. A way that I love to connect with God is through singing. And I've always loved to sing. And at that point, when I was in that time, I wouldn't sing, I wouldn't dance because my whole life was around exercise and eating. I also wouldn't go to church because I just couldn't. And my family still kept going to church, but it was like we kind of moved churches for a bit because the church I go to now is quite far away from where I live. So it was just easier. I wasn't really singing at that time and I couldn't really remember the words to church songs, but I really wanted to sing one day. I was like, I just want to sing to my father. This is the bit that always makes me sad. Um, but I just wanted to sing to him again because I knew he was there with me. And so I was like, I'm just going to talk to you, God. And I'd forgotten the lyrics to the song. It was "Oh Come to the Altar." So I was like, are you hurting and broken within, overwhelmed by the weight of your sin? Jesus is calling. Have you come to the end of yourself? And then I forgot the lyrics. I was like, that was really embarrassing to say. It's not embarrassing, but
It's
I was just so
not.
desperate to sing to him. So I
Yeah.
made up my own lyric. I was like, need a doctor to fix your health. Because I did. I did need a doctor to fix my health because I was so unhealthy. And that is just such a beautiful moment. And I always love to include that because I'd obviously turned away from God, but I didn't want to. It wasn't like a choice. I couldn't really control it. It was OCD.
Yeah.
And still in that time, I was like so desperate to sing to him. And he was like, sing to me. Like, I don't care if you don't remember the words, like, sing to me, sing what's on your heart. And so that is such an amazing moment. And now I love to sing and I'm like constantly singing. And then this is kind of where you can come in. But I just been like, I really want to go to church. I think I said to my dad, I can just feel how God's been there through it all. And I really want to go back to church. Everything was happening all at once. It was so quick. And so my dad sent a voice message to you. I don't really remember what it was because I also don't have a very good memory of that time because
Yeah.
it was all over the place. What did he say to you?
So he called me before the service one Sunday. We'd have our church service, and then in the evening, it was just an extra space for young people. Some input, some teaching, some chat, some fun stuff, just like space to hang out. And you'd just never been to that because we'd started it whilst you were really unwell and you obviously hadn't been back. And he called me that Sunday before the main service and was like, look, Ruby said that she wants to come to church today. Can I bring her in the evening? And I was like, we're not doing it today. I was so gutted. I was like, oh no. I suddenly was like going through my head, like, can we just run it? Are there people who could be on team? Oh, how can we make it happen so that we can get this girl back in the building? And we just couldn't run it that week. And I was like, but she can like, we will be running it next week. She can come next week. And I just remember, like, for that whole week, I was so desperate that you'd still be in that mindset of, yeah, I still want to be there. I still want to go. You know, sometimes, like, when you're not in a very good place and you have, like, that little moment of bravery and you're like, yeah,
Mm,
today I think I could do it. And then it's gone after that if you miss the chance. And I was like,
yeah.
oh, please, can that not happen? And then the next Sunday, you did come, which was the best thing ever. And I kind of don't know how much you remember about that day that you came, but I felt like I was on the edge of my seat all day, like, is she gonna make it? Is she gonna make it? Because I was so keen that you'd be able to come. And also I think it just felt so nuts. Because I hadn't seen you a lot, but I'd seen you kind of off and on when you weren't very well.
Yeah.
And then the idea that that girl that I'd seen at the lowest point wanted to come back to church. And then you came in the evening, and I probably had known you for what, like 5 years at that point, maybe. Not even one of the youth, but since you were a
Mm,
kid. And the Ruby that came that evening to church, I had never met that Ruby ever before you got really unwell. I just had never seen or experienced that version of you. The energy that you had, the joy that you had, there was confidence, like you just wanted to chat to everybody and you were excited to be there. And there was so much life in you that I had just
yeah.
never seen in you before. I mean, I was supposed to be running this thing, and I just think I spent the whole evening just like watching you, like, what has happened? Like, what is going on? It was just phenomenal. It literally blew my mind.
It's like radical. It's insane.
Yeah.
And I don't really remember it. But that was so good. The thing you said about like joy, it was just joy of the Lord. It was also FOMO, not really FOMO, but like I'd been gone for like a year. I'd not had a life. I'd basically been dead for a year, like spiritually, emotionally, and physically just drained. So I was really feeling like I wanted to get my life back. And so that's what I did. I threw myself into everything in a really good way because I went back to church, but also in some bad ways. Also at school, it was crazy because these people had never heard me speak before. And then all of a sudden, I was like here, there, everywhere. It was insane. And I did do some things that I do regret now. But I think I also needed to kind of live like that in a way so that I could get back to normal because I didn't know what normal was. I became a teenager in that year, and I also just didn't want any presents that year. I was like, don't get me any presents. I don't feel like I deserve them. I hadn't been alive. Also, at that time, you just don't really know who you are. You're still figuring yourself out. So I was really confused. And obviously, I've been living this crazy, restricted life for the past year and a half. And before that, I was like a child, so I didn't really know anything about myself. And then I came out of that and I was like, who actually am I? So I was just throwing myself into everything. And that was exhausting as well. I'd had a crazy year nine. Start of year nine, I was still OCD crazy. And then December, I just recovered miraculously. And then January, February, March, April, I'd say were wild. I was just, I was
You're just
just
you were trying to make up for lost time, really, weren't you?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. I was trying to make up for what I'd missed. In the summer, I was starting to find my normal. And then in July, August, I don't know, it was new wine. And I went for a day with my dad. And that was amazing. And I'd never seen so many Christians in one place. And I was like, what on earth is happening here? Because also, you guys, like at our old church, you'd been going to new wine for a while and I'd never been. And so I'd heard amazing things about it, but wasn't, I didn't really feel like I belonged at the church we were at, kind of. I mean, I'd been there my whole life, but I like didn't know who I was. So that was hard to kind of fit in with everyone else. And then I went to New Wine and I was like, whoa, this is insane. Like, I do actually belong. I'm not just a weird random Christian. Like, there are like thousands, millions, but like thousands at this festival alone. And I only went for a day, but I found it incredible. And then all of year 10, I was finding normal again. I felt like myself and I felt like I was like at a good place in my life where I just felt steady, but like still so many lessons I was learning about God's character, God's plans for me, basically. Because it had been such a long time of not really feeling like I had a plan or like I had a future. So year 10 was quite good. I got baptized before New Wine
Good.
in June, end of June. That was amazing. I gave my testimony there. That was like me committing myself to God. Before that, I was meant to get baptized in September of 2024, but I
Yeah.
ended up getting baptized in June 2025 because it just didn't really feel like the right time. I'm glad I waited till June, but I also think that it was a whole thing about like doubt as well and also just not feeling ready. I felt for the longest time I felt like I had to be ready because I've always had this thing about perfectionism and I have to be perfect. And God's like really teaching me that I don't have to be perfect and that I can't be perfect. And that is why I need a relationship with him because he is perfect. But I felt like I couldn't get baptized because I wasn't perfect, which just doesn't make sense. But I felt like once I got baptized, I would feel this pressure to just not sin. I keep on flashing back, like doing loads of like time jumps. But I remember it was in this house, so it must have been like in the last 5 years. It was probably when I was about 10. There was so much OCD around that. It was like in COVID times. That was when OCD really started being noticeable in my life. But there was this day where I was like, I'm not going to sin today. I'm going to try so hard to not sin today. I was 10 years old. I didn't really understand. I didn't have my like theology perfect yet. I remember it was at dinner and I'm a vegetarian, or like I was at this point. I kind of am now. It's complicated. Um, my dad was like passing salmon between, I don't think I've told you this, it's so random, but I was sat here My sister was here, my dad was here. My sister was passing salmon to my dad and it dropped on my plate and I freaked out. And I was so angry. I like stormed out of the kitchen. I was like livid. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I've just sinned. I've gotten so angry. And I was like so upset with myself. So that's just an example. The main part of my baptism was just committing myself. And then like the fruit will follow.
Mm.
Summer of year 10, I went to New Wine finally for the whole week and it was amazing. And so many people like prayed for me, had words and images for me. And I'd never had that. I've never really had anyone give me so many images and like prophetically. And also tongues. Speaking in tongues, I'd never really heard that. I found that insane. And I still don't really understand it, but I'm so interested. It was just such a massive part of my spiritual journey. One of the days there, before the main session, I was like, God, I really want you to speak to me about the way I look. I don't really feel confident in the way I look. And I'd kind of forgotten as I went into the session. And then it was the end of the session. And then it was late night worship, and I stayed. And there was this girl, and she came up to me, like she's a young person, not even an adult. And she was like, I feel like I need to pray for you for something. And I was like, I don't know. And then she was like, by the way, you're so beautiful. And I was like, and I just started bawling my eyes out. Um, because I was like, whoa, that is what you needed to pray for me. Because I didn't know what I needed prayer for because I'd forgotten. And then she just reminded me. Well, God reminded me. And so she prayed for me. And then this woman came up to me and she had this image of like God was painting a portrait of me, but there was like a gap missing. And it felt like God was restoring something in me. And that was what I'd had on my heart from that week. God was restoring the creative parts of me, the singing and the dancing. And she was like, do you paint or draw? And I was like, no, but I am really creative and I've not had that. And I feel like God is bringing that back into my life. And so that was amazing. And then there was another woman that was like, I just see this image of a sunflower like stretching up towards heaven. And I was like, wow, because I'd been feeling really doubtful about if I was good enough to go to heaven. And I just felt really not good. That's again the OCD and the perfectionism. But the fact that she had this image of like a sunflower stretching towards heaven was really reassuring. And then I came back from New Wine, and that's bringing me closer to where I am today. It's just so nice to have a relationship with God where He's just teaching me new things every day. I'm just learning so much about Him and about myself. Every day is something new, fresh revelations. So the past 2 weeks, I'd say I've been feeling really doubtful. And you sent me two songs. And I haven't told you this, but
Yeah.
I said to God, like, I feel so doubtful right now. Can you just tell Megan? I just want Megan to message me or something. And that night you messaged me and you sent
Oh,
me
I
two
didn't
songs.
do that.
I know.
Oh,
um, and it was literally like, Don't You Give Up on Me by Brandon Lake. And I hadn't heard that before, but I've been obsessed with it. And that's been so helpful. So it's like, I know that God is real. It's just learning to trust Him because I can't trust myself. If I put my trust in myself. What's Proverbs 3 verse 5? Trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him and He'll make your path straight. It's just a daily thing of learning to surrender myself, pick up my cross daily, and His mercies are new daily. Daily, just daily. He's teaching me so much and He's been really good to me.
so,
That's kind of my testimony.
so good. I just feel like I could hear you talk about your experience of life for hours on end, to be
Well, I
honest.
feel like that was quite long. I just kept on going.
You've lived a lot of life, mate. I would just love to encourage you that your ability to still be able to see God, even in the pits of despair
Mm.
and struggle and pain, is just phenomenal. You said something about how there was like a moment for you where things were just at their worst, but you still knew that it was going to get better.
Yeah.
Everything that you were facing, all the struggle, like all the stuff that you were going through, And the fact that there was still that little bit in you that was like, God's gonna change this. Like there's a little bit of hope here. And for you, I mean, at that point you would have been what, like 13?
Yeah.
For you to have
Yeah.
like that grit and resilience and strength in you to be like, no, this is not it. This is not how my
Mhm.
story is just gonna be now. God's
Yeah.
gonna do something in this. It's so inspiring. And it's also like it has just been an absolute joy to see, as in it wasn't a joy to see
No.
you at that point. That was really hard and really sad, but it is a joy, isn't it? And I think this is one of the real gifts that God gives to us in his gift of community and his
Yeah.
the way that he designs us for community is that we, we do life alongside people and people, deal with their own really heavy stuff. And you see God move in them. And then
Mm.
you get to the joy of seeing them come out the other side. To me, I think is one of the biggest gifts that God gives us in community is seeing him work in people around us.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing.
All right.
Should we finish by praying?
Yeah.
I'd love to pray for you, and I'd love also just to pray for. I always feel funny when I say things like this
Yes.
because I'm like,
Pray
I'm
for the viewers.
all
The
our
fans.
subscribers that I'm sure are watching right now. But on the off chance that there's one person watching or listening that resonates with any of your experience and the stuff that you've
Mm.
struggled with, I'd love to pray for that person. Let's pray. God, I thank you for Ruby. Oh God, I just thank you for the absolute gift that she is. God, thank you for her life. Thank you for her story. Thank you for the way that you have walked through the valley with her so clearly. And God, I thank you for her clarity around that as well. God, I thank you for the way that even in the valley, in the deepest place in the valley, that she could still see you. God, thank you for the way that you are still visible to her. And God, thank you for just the joy and the freedom that you've given her in her healing and in her learning and reflecting and understanding the experiences that she's had. God, thank you for the way that you've just really redeemed her hurt and her pain. And God, I thank you. I just want to honor her as well, God, for just the courage to share that experience in all its difficulty and in all the hard places. God, I thank you that for her willingness to share that in the hope that it encourages someone who's been through the same thing or maybe hasn't been through the same thing, but just needs to hear that reassurance that God is still with them and that God is working in the really hard places. And so, God, we pray that for anyone who might be listening or might be watching who feels some of that hurt, feels some of that pain, feels some of that struggle, God, would you sit with them? Would your spirit be with them? Would your spirit be in them? God, would you be their guide? Would you be the light where they really need it? Would you be hope for them? God, we thank you for the gift that it is that we get to see you change our lives and that we get to encourage people with our experiences and what we've seen of you. And so, God, I pray blessing over Ruby, and blessing over anybody who's feeling some of that same struggle. God, would they know your presence with them continuously? In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks so much, Rubes.
Thank you.
That is the end of our official episode 1. You made it with us, whoever you are, one person. I feel like we should invent a subscriber and name them.
What? Like a fake one?
Yeah, just so that we've got someone to like refer to.
All right.
Maybe.
Like Brenda from
Yeah,
Birmingham.
Brenda from
Brenda from Brighton, maybe. That
yeah,
works better.
yes, that is good. Brenda for Brighton, we're so grateful for you listening to us and joining us on this journey. Thank you so much. That's us. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of the Witness Podcast. If you have any suggestions for future episodes, you can email us at hellowitnesspodcast@gmail.com. See you next time.